What is something you're excited to experience about the culture where you're going for study abroad? Maybe it's a type of food, the celebration of a particular holiday, or trying out a popular sport. When we think about culture, often what comes to mind are these visible or tangible things, like what certain groups of people eat or wear, or the ways they greet each other, or the music they listen to. But culture is so much more than that. Culture is one of those concepts that's hard to define and people like to argue about. One thing most people agree on, though, is that culture has a profound influence on our expectations of and interactions with others. One way to think about culture is as the shared traditions, beliefs, and behaviors of a group that shape what they think of as important, normal, or appropriate. A shared culture also provides members with a sense of connection and belonging. Think about it this way. What is something that you do, or an expression you use, here at UMass that your friends or family at home don't understand or think is strange? Chances are it's something that's unique to the culture of UMass. It's something that you share with this group of people in this place. This brings us to the fact that all of us belong to a variety of groups and cultures. We often talk about culture in national terms: American culture, Japanese culture, Australian culture. And while there's some truth to this idea, cultures have their roots in a lot more than just geography. Many of the other groups that we belong to also guide our habits, values, and interactions. We're learning some interesting things about culture from the field of cultural neuroscience, which looks at the connection between culture and the brain. One of the things we're learning is that culture is wired deep within our neural circuitry. Now let's be clear, culture is not something we're born with. We learn cultures. But cultural habits and ideas can become so ingrained in our brains that we don't recognize it as cultural conditioning. In fact, we may not realize that the behaviors and beliefs we think of as normal and appropriate are matters of culture, until we encounter someone whose culture, and whose idea of normal and appropriate, are different from ours. When you study abroad, you will be confronted with cultural differences, and you may be confronted with a lot of differences all at once. This is what we mean when we talk about culture shock. Suddenly the patterns you've established to give your life meaning or to be in relationships with others might not work in this new context, and you may feel overwhelmed or lost. A lot of things you hear or read at this point will lead you to think that cultural adjustment is simply a matter of becoming aware of these differences and then making up your mind to change and adjust. But it's actually not that simple. Another thing we're learning from cultural neuroscience is that adapting to new cultural norms actually requires rewiring our brains. This means undoing existing networks and creating new ones. This can be an uncomfortable process, and getting through it requires some effort and commitment from you. So I want you to be able to think back on this when you're in the midst of adjusting to new cultures. Sometimes it can just be helpful to know what's going on in your brain, that it's going to be hard for a little bit, and it's going to get better. A few more tips that can help. 1, be gentle with yourself. You're doing something that's new and hard. 2, take a break if you need to. Curl up on the couch for an evening with Netflix, do something familiar like go to McDonald's, then jump back into things again. 3, know that functioning in a new culture will get easier and become more natural as your brain creates these new neural networks. And finally 4, remember that you've traversed cultures before. Each of us is a part of many different overlapping cultures. Your coming to UMass, for example, was a process of integrating into a new culture. So before you get into the thick of it, take a little time to think about what helped you get through previous experiences of cultural adjustment, and how might you be able to use some of those skills and tools to help you in this next adventure.